In 1892, the official story says Chicago built the world's Columbian Exposition in 2 years. 400 temporary structures, covering 600 acres, constructed by a city still recovering from a fire 2 decades earlier. But the Jackson Park site had been swampland. The drainage alone should have taken months. The electrical infrastructure required miles of underground conduit. And the manufacturer's building covered 31 acres under a single roof, larger than any structure built in America up to that point. 2 years. Swamped to fully operational city. With technology from 1890. And when the fair ended, they demolished it all. Burned the buildings. Buried the foundations. Returned the land to park space. The same pattern appears in San Francisco after 1906. In Galveston after 1900. In dozens of American cities between 1880 and 1920. Rebuilt. Redesign. Remove what came before. This is a documentary exploration of architectural anomalies in the historical record. What follows presents documented evidence and invites examination of patterns that challenge conventional construction timelines. No conclusions are certain. Multiple interpretations exist for every example shown. The official narrative of 19th century urban development follows a clear trajectory. Cities grew organically. Technology advanced linearly. Architecture reflected the capabilities of its era. But the physical evidence creates friction. In 1871, the Great Chicago Fire destroyed over 3 square miles of the city. Contemporary accounts describe wooden structures, densely packed, burning for 2 days. Within 20 years, Chicago had rebuilt itself as a showcase of Beaux-Arts architecture, complete with underground freight tunnels, a unified electrical grid, and buildings that wouldn't look out of place in modern city centers. The timeline compresses uncomfortably. Take the Rookery Building, completed in 1888. 11 stories. Hydraulic elevators. Central light court with ironwork designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. Load-bearing masonry walls transitioning to steel frame construction, a technique that supposedly hadn't been perfected yet. The foundation system used a floating raft designed to compensate for Chicago's unstable soil, an engineering solution that required precise calculation of load distribution across soft clay layers. Construction time, 2 years. Compare this to modern construction. The Willis Tower, using contemporary equipment, computer modeling, and prefabricated components, took 3 years to build in the 1970s. The engineering was less complex. The foundation work more straightforward. The ratio doesn't track. San Francisco presents a similar compression. After the 1906 earthquake and fire, the city rebuilt 28,000 buildings in less than 3 years. Not temporary structures, permanent commercial and residential buildings with ornate facades, consistent architectural language, and integrated infrastructure. The official explanation emphasizes American resilience and industrial capacity. But the photographs from 1907 show something else. Entire city blocks with uniform cornice lines. Consistent window spacing. Architectural harmony across buildings supposedly designed by different firms, funded by different investors, built by different contractors. The cohesion suggests central planning on a scale not documented in the historical record. City Hall alone, destroyed in 1906, was rebuilt by 1915 in the Beaux-Arts style. The dome rises 307 feet, taller than the U.S. Capitol. The building required 7,900 tons of structural steel. Contemporary accounts credit the project to Arthur Brown Jr., working with a team that somehow coordinated masonry, ironwork, and decorative elements into a structure that feels like it came from a single vision. 9 years start to finish. During a period when most of the city's construction workforce was simultaneously rebuilding the entire urban core. The logistics create pressure against the timeline. But Chicago and San Francisco aren't isolated cases. The pattern repeats. Galveston, Texas, destroyed by hurricane in 1900, rebuilt with a raised grade that required lifting entire city blocks on jacks while continuing to occupy the buildings. Baltimore, Great Fire of 1904, 1,500 buildings destroyed, rebuilt within 2 years. Jacksonville, Florida, Fire of 1901, 146 city blocks destroyed, rebuilt by 1903. Each city shows the same characteristics: rapid reconstruction, architectural consistency, infrastructure that seems to precede the buildings it serves. And each city's historical record includes gaps: missing building permits, incomplete contractor records, photographs that show finished buildings with no documentation of the construction process. The gaps aren't universal, but they're consistent enough to form a pattern. Then there's the question of style. The Beaux-Arts movement dominated American architecture between 1880 and 1920, but the training pipeline doesn't fully account for the proliferation. The École des Beaux-Arts in Paris produced roughly 30 American graduates per decade during this period. Yet hundreds of American cities suddenly featured buildings in this style, designed by local architects who had supposedly internalized complex classical proportions and decorative systems through correspondence courses and pattern books. The architectural literacy appears fully formed. Salt Lake City's Capitol building, Montana's capital, state capitals across the American West, all completed within a 20-year window, all demonstrating mastery of classical orders, dome construction, and ornamental programs that required teams of skilled craftsmen. The workforce distribution doesn't add up. These weren't coastal cities with established craft traditions. These were frontier towns that had been small settlements one generation earlier. Yet the buildings stand, photographed during construction, documented in newspapers, occupied continuously since completion. The evidence is physical. The timeline is verified. But the mechanism remains unclear. Cross-regional consistency amplifies the friction. Compare the county courthouses built across Texas between 1880 and 1910. Different architects, different contractors, different funding sources. Yet the buildings share proportional systems, decorative vocabulary, and construction techniques that suggest either a common template or a shared knowledge base far more sophisticated than the historical record indicates. 60 courthouses, 40-year window, architectural harmony that implies coordination. The official explanation points to pattern books and standardized design curricula. But pattern books show elevations, not engineering solutions. They don't explain how small-town builders consistently solved complex structural problems: load distribution, thermal expansion, foundation settlement, that required calculus-level mathematics in an era when most construction foremen had elementary education. The knowledge transfer mechanism isn't documented, and the buildings themselves create questions about capacity. The Montana Capitol used 650,000 bricks. The limestone came from Indiana, shipped by rail. The copper dome required metal workers trained in European techniques. This in a state with fewer than 250,000 residents at the time of construction, most involved in mining and agriculture. The resource allocation suggests priorities that don't align with frontier economics. In city after city across America and Britain, the underground infrastructure predates the demand that would justify it. Boston's sewer system, initiated in the 1870s, was designed for a population density the city wouldn't reach until 1920. London's interceptor sewers, completed in the 1860s, could handle waste volumes that corresponded to population projections 40 years out. The engineering wasn't responsive. It was anticipatory. Philadelphia's water system tells the same story. The Fairmount Waterworks, operational by 1815, pumped water through a distribution network sized for a city 3 times larger than Philadelphia's actual population. The pump house itself, a neoclassical complex along the Schuylkill River, functioned as both utility infrastructure and public architecture, with proportions and decorative details that communicated permanence. The investment preceded the need. Then there's the Erie Canal. Official completion in 1825. 363 miles from Albany to Buffalo, cut through wilderness that had been frontier territory a generation earlier. 83 locks. 18 aqueducts. A consistent 40-foot width and 4-foot depth maintained across terrain that included bedrock, clay, and marshland. The project took 8 years. The workforce consisted largely of immigrant laborers using hand tools, black powder, and horse-drawn equipment. No steam-powered excavators. No dynamite, that wasn't invented until 1867. No mechanized surveying equipment beyond transits and chains. Yet the gradient calculations were precise enough that water flowed consistently across a 363-mile route with an elevation change of 571 feet, managed through lock placements that modern engineers consider optimal for the terrain. The mathematical sophistication exceeds the documented tools available. Contemporary accounts credit the project to engineers trained on the job, learning as they went. But the precision doesn't support trial and error. Lock chambers required stone walls fitted without mortar in some sections, using a technique called dry stone masonry that demands generational craft knowledge. The mortar used in other sections was hydraulic cement, a formula supposedly lost since Roman times and not rediscovered in Britain until 1824, 1 year before the Erie Canal's completion. The knowledge appears when needed, then recedes from the record. Rail follows a similar pattern. By 1860, the United States had 30,000 miles of operational railway. Britain had 10,000 miles. The construction pace averaged 10 miles per day during peak periods, with crews coordinating grading, bridge construction, track laying, and station building simultaneously across hundreds of miles. The logistics suggest organizational capacity beyond what municipal records indicate. Take the Transcontinental Railroad. Official narrative. Completed in 1869, connecting Omaha to Sacramento. 2 companies, Union Pacific Building West, Central Pacific Building East, racing to lay track across unsurveyed territory. The Central Pacific crossed the Sierra Nevada, blasting 15 tunnels through granite, some over 1,600 feet long, using black powder and hand drills. Official timeline. Summit Tunnel, the longest, took 18 months. Modern engineering assessments suggest that timeline would require 3 8-hour shifts working simultaneously from both ends and from a central shaft, meaning coordination of drilling angles through 1,659 feet of solid rock with accuracy sufficient that the crews met in the middle with an alignment error of less than 2 inches. In 1867, by lantern light, without power tools or laser guidance. The precision doesn't match the technology. But rail infrastructure tells only part of the story. The stations themselves create additional friction. Consider the major terminals built between 1900 and 1920. Grand Central Terminal, New York, completed 1913. 44 platforms serving 67 tracks on 2 levels, all underground. The engineering required electrifying the entire approach system, excavating below street level while maintaining train service, and coordinating the construction with ongoing urban development above. Construction time, 10 years. Pennsylvania Station, New York, completed 1910. Similar scale. The excavation removed 3 million cubic yards of earth, tunneled beneath the Hudson and East Rivers, and created a cathedral-like waiting room with 150-foot ceilings supported by steel trusses that weighed 650 tons each. Construction time, 8 years. Both projects employed thousands of workers, but the coordination mechanisms aren't fully documented. How did foremen communicate across a 60-acre underground construction site without radios? How did they maintain scheduling with supply chains that depended on horse-drawn delivery through congested city streets? The logistical solutions aren't preserved in the historical record, yet the buildings stand as evidence that solutions existed. Storage infrastructure adds another layer. Grain elevators built along the Great Lakes between 1880 and 1900 could each hold over 1 million bushels. The structures used slip-form concrete construction, a technique that involved continuously pouring concrete into moving forms, creating monolithic walls up to 120 feet tall. The process required concrete chemistry that controlled setting time, temperature management during curing, and structural calculations that ensured the walls could withstand lateral grain pressure. This in an era when concrete engineering was supposedly experimental, when the understanding of rebar placement and compression strength was still developing. Yet the elevators functioned. Some remain operational today, still holding grain, still demonstrating structural integrity after more than a century. The engineering was mature from the start. Buffalo's concrete central elevator, completed in 1917, held 2.5 million bushels. The concrete walls were 16 inches thick at the base, tapering to 12 inches at the top, a proportional system that optimized material use while maintaining structural safety. The design appeared without documented prototypes, without the trial failures that typically precede successful innovation. The expertise was present when needed. Britain shows parallel patterns. The London Underground, the world's first subway system, opened in 1863. Within 40 years, the network included multiple interconnected lines totaling over 30 miles, with stations demonstrating architectural consistency that suggested centralized design control. The initial Metropolitan line used cut-and-cover construction, but deeper lines required tunneling through London clay at depths of 70 feet. The Great Head Shield, a cylindrical tunneling machine that enabled this work, appeared in 1869 with surprising sophistication. It featured compressed air systems to prevent water infiltration, cutting heads that could adapt to varying soil conditions, and segmental iron linings that provided immediate structural support. The technology emerged complete, with few documented development iterations. Station design across the underground maintained uniformity despite being built over 5 decades by different companies with different funding structures. Platform lengths matched standardized train configurations that didn't yet exist when the early stations were designed. Tile work, signage systems, and architectural details followed consistent principles that implied either strict design guidelines or a shared architectural language not recorded in contemporary documents. The coordination existed without clear documentation of its mechanism. Electrical grids add final pressure to conventional timelines. Between 1882 and 1900, American cities transitioned from gas lighting to electrical systems. The infrastructure required underground conduit, step-down transformers, switching stations, and distribution networks that had to account for voltage drop over distance. The planning preceded widespread electrical adoption. Chicago's electrical grid, operational by 1893 for the World's Fair, could serve the entire downtown core. The system required coordination between power generation, distribution, and end use, coordination that implied either remarkable foresight or knowledge of demand that shouldn't have been predictable. New York's grid, built by competing companies, somehow maintained compatible voltage standards and interconnection points that allowed eventual integration. The standardization appeared organically, without regulatory framework or centralized planning, yet achieved technical consistency that modern utility coordination struggles to replicate. The system-level thinking was present before the systems existed. This interpretation accepts the official timeline but acknowledges documentation loss. Construction records burned in fires. Municipal archives were incomplete. Oral craft knowledge transferred without written record. The compression of timelines reflects industrial capacity historians have underestimated, and the architectural consistency emerged from pattern books and craft networks more effective than surviving documents indicate. The Erie Canal's precision came from surveying expertise developed during military campaigns. The Beaux-Arts proliferation resulted from a generation of architects trained through correspondence and apprenticeship. The infrastructure anticipation reflected urban planning practices that existed informally, without the bureaucratic paper trails modern observers expect. Under this model, the anomalies are artifacts of incomplete records, not evidence of hidden history. The buildings are exactly what they claim to be, constructed when the dates say they were, by people using methods that were documented at the time but have since been lost or underemphasized in historical narratives. The gaps are accidents of preservation, not erasure. Model 2. Inheritance and adaptation. This interpretation suggests the 19th century wasn't building from scratch but inheriting and adapting existing infrastructure. The underground systems, the architectural vocabulary, the engineering knowledge, all remnants of an earlier period of development, either from a pre-1800s building tradition more sophisticated than currently acknowledged or from structures built during a period the historical record has compressed or misrepresented. Under this model, the 1811 to 1812 New Madrid earthquakes, the 1815 eruption of Mount Tambora, and the year without a summer, in 1816 mark a period of disruption. What followed wasn't purely new construction but reconstruction, rebuilding atop foundations that already existed, repairing infrastructure that had been damaged, restoring buildings whose origins predated the disasters but whose restoration was attributed to new construction in contemporary records. The architectural consistency reflects continuity, not coincidence. The infrastructure anticipation reflects inheritance, not foresight. The engineering sophistication reflects recovered knowledge, not rapid innovation. The Chicago fire, the San Francisco earthquake, the Baltimore fire, each disaster provided an opportunity to update inherited structures while maintaining their core elements. The demolition of the 1893 World's Fair becomes less puzzling if the buildings being destroyed were renovations of structures already present, rather than pure temporary construction. This model doesn't require a global civilization, just a more complex recent history than the simplified narrative suggests. Model 3. Metaphorical framework. The third interpretation treats Tartaria not as a literal historical entity but as a conceptual frame for examining how societies remember and forget their own construction capacity. The anomalies become evidence not of a lost civilization but of discontinuities in craft knowledge, industrial organization, and architectural ambition. Under this reading, the pattern isn't about who built the buildings but about why the buildings stopped. Why did architectural ambition plateau? Why did the craft knowledge that enabled the Montana Capitol's construction fragment? Why did the organizational capacity that coordinated transcontinental rail construction seemingly diminish? The question inverts. Instead of asking how the 19th century accomplished so much, ask why the 20th century accomplished comparatively less with superior technology. Modern construction takes longer, costs more per square foot, and produces buildings with shorter functional lifespans than their 19th century counterparts. Contemporary infrastructure projects, California's high-speed rail, Boston's Big Dig, face timeline extensions and budget overruns that make the Erie Canal's completion seem implausible by comparison. The discontinuity runs forward, not backward. This model treats Tartaria as shorthand for a set of lost capacities, organizational, technical, economic, that modern systems haven't recovered. The mystery isn't ancient history. It's recent forgetting. Return to 1816, the year without a summer. Volcanic ash from Tambara's eruption blocked sunlight across the northern hemisphere. Crops failed across Europe and North America. Temperatures dropped. Snow fell in June in New England. Famine followed. Contemporary accounts describe widespread crisis, but recovery appears in the historical record as surprisingly rapid. By 1825, the Erie Canal was complete. By 1830, rail construction was accelerating. By 1850, cities across America were undertaking infrastructure projects that required industrial capacity, craft knowledge, and coordination mechanisms that had supposedly been disrupted a generation earlier. The resilience seems remarkable. Or the disruption was less total than the historical narrative emphasizes. Or the recovery drew on resources not fully documented. Each interpretation carries implications,